Hi, welcome back. I'm just doing a quick video today on a random assortment of my favorite books. There's not too many of them. There's some parenting, marriage, just kind of life in general books, and a money one. So it's a random assortment, but I just wanted to share with you guys a few of my favorites. Okay, so like I said, I have parenting, marriage, all sorts of stuff. So they're in no particular order here. And I also might mention a few other ones that I don't have my hard copy of. So write them down, check them out, save this video, whatever. All of them are very, very good for lots of different reasons. So my first one is No Drama Discipline. So this is a parenting book. It's by Dr. Dan Siegel, and he also wrote The Whole Brain Child, which this is one book that I don't have my hard copy of, but is super good. The Whole Brain Child I would recommend reading first, actually. It explains the development of kids' brains, kind of like the biology side and the psychological side. And it's super interesting because we kind of forget that kids are at a totally different place than we are, right? Our brains are not fully developed until about 25. And so if you think about those first even 20 years of kids, their brain is going through so much development and change and adaptation and all of that. And so that's why parenting is hard in one way. But it's really good to understand what goes on in them, to understand behaviors, emotions, all sorts of things like that. And then No Drama Discipline is a really good follow-up to once you understand kind of their brain chemistry, kind of how to deal with that, right? Because just because they're developing doesn't mean that they don't need discipline and structure and things like that. So this is a great book. My next one it's called Mindset. This is a pretty quick and easy read. It's for all sorts of things, right? It can be applied to school, business, work, all that kind of stuff, just your mindset in general for life. It talks about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. If you've heard of those before, or even just hearing those terms, you probably know they're very different. Having a fixed mindset keeps you kind of locked in and inhibits growth, and a growth mindset is obviously the opposite. It definitely encourages you to grow. So this is a great one, just like I said, even for life in general, trying to help you get to a place where you grow. Okay, if you've watched any of my other videos, I talk about EFT, which is emotionally focused therapy. That is developed by Dr. Sue Johnson, and she's who wrote this book, Hold Me Tight. She's who wrote this book, Hold Me Tight. This is one of her main relationship marriage books, and it talks about the cycles that couples can easily slip into, and just kind of how it's a negative cycle usually that is what causes a lot of struggle in marriage. So she explains that and then just kind of gives a lot of really helpful tips of how to work through that. So that is a really great one. Honestly, I guess it depends on you and your spouse, but sometimes I think that reading books kind of together, I realize that's probably hard at certain phases of life, but it can be really helpful because you can go along slowly and be like, oh yeah, this is totally me. Or, you can each say, yeah, that makes sense for me, or I need you to know that about me. My husband and I did that on a road trip one time, so it was like the perfect time because you're stuck in a car. We don't do audiobooks because we're like old souls, I guess. I don't know. But an audiobook would work great too, because then you can listen and along the way say, hey, that was me. So maybe that's a good idea for a couple. Okay, this book is super interesting. It's called The Healing Self, and it is all about, I definitely believe in holistic health in a lot of ways. I'm not against modern medicine at all. I've used modern medicine for lots of things, but I do believe a lot in a holistic approach of things, and this book is super interesting at explaining how our body is really designed to heal itself. On a very simple level, you can think of a scab, right? Our body is just designed and knows that when we get a cut, it goes through that scabbing process, and that's a good thing, right? So I know that's a small example, but it really talks about how our autoimmune system and our nervous system and all of those are designed to truly heal ourselves. And it gives, for those of you interested in any mental health related thing, it gives some examples too of someone struggling with mental health and how they took more of a physical approach to heal their mind in a sense. So that book is super duper interesting, written by 2 doctors. So you'll have to check that one out. Okay, next one. This book I love so much too. So this book I love so much. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. I recommend this to most of my clients because it's just so interesting and fascinating and mind-blowing. So we kind of have an epidemic of anxiety in our culture, in our world today. So a lot of people could probably benefit from this book because it explains how anxiety impacts our body and how our body system works with anxiety and all that kind of stuff. I won't give away what that was like a weird comment. So it kind of explains how like a zebra in the wild might be under anxiety, right? Like if it's being chased by a predator or something, it obviously the system would automatically go up into high alert, and that's good and normal because that's part of what saves it. But they are able to turn that system off, and a lot of us are not able to turn that system off. We keep our anxiety on even past the point of there being some sort of potential threat. And so it explains what that really does to our physical body, our autoimmune system and all that kind of thing. There's huge correlations between anxiety and a lot of physical ailments. So this is written by a doctor out of Stanford, and it's kind of funny too. I know that sounds weird because it sounds like a super nerdy book, and it kind of is, but he has a great sense of humor too. Okay, the next one, this one's a random one. I don't have the other cover, so I'm sorry. This looks like nothing, but this one is called Thou Shall Prosper, and this book is life-changing. So it probably falls more in like the business money category, but it is so full of wisdom. It's written by a rabbi, and he is super wise. So I absolutely loved this book. I read it really fast because it's just like full of life wisdom. So I highly recommend this one too. Thou Shall Prosper. Sorry, I don't have the cover. Okay, couple more here. Eat Smarter. This one I just read this past year. It's a pretty new book. It's by Sean Stevenson. He's a very well-known name, I guess, in the health industry. He has a podcast as well that's super good if you want to check that out. I believe that one's called The Model Health Show. And he, in normal people terms, like if we're not a doctor or something, he explains our biology and how our digestive system and our gut and all that kind of stuff. He explains how all of that works and how much food impacts those things. And I like some of that stuff anyways, just for my own interest. But I also am telling you guys to watch it to read it, because there's lots of research and support in there too about how our diet affects mood, behavior, mental health, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of research out there to say there's big connections, because there's a huge connection between the mind and gut. There's lots of connection there. Our vagus nerve connects those two, and they just really can't be separated. So anyways, this book is really good for understanding how that works a little bit more. Okay, next book. Here's another one with no cover, but this is because I don't even think this book has a cover. This book is so old. I don't even know how old. I could find it, but I'm not going to waste that time. So it's called Children the Challenge. You can get this off Amazon. If you look for it at a bookstore, I don't know if you can find it or not, Possibly. It's just super old. So my mom is actually who recommended this one to me, and it's kind of the old school way of going about things, and that's why I shared at the beginning more of a newer approach to parenting. And there's a million different ways to handle parenting. Every kid is different, every family is different, so I totally know there's lots of ways. The thing that I think has worked really, really well for our household is kind of combining the old and the new. But this is a super great book. One of the things I love about it is that it has an index in the back. So I'll be honest with you, I have not read this like front to back, but I've read a lot of it through the index, meaning like if you have a certain issue with your kid, you can look it up in the back here and go to those pages, and it'll be just a few pages long of how to deal with that specific issue. So like kicking, for example, there's 2 different sections of the book that talk about how to deal with kicking. And there's quite a few different topics in the back here. So I really love this book. It's super good to have on hand. You really don't have to read it all the way through. You can totally just use the reference points, and that's a good one. So you can get it. I think I got mine used on Amazon for like a few dollars. It was very cheap. Okay, last book. This one might be most well known to some of you. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People. So this is a very famous book. Most of you have probably heard of it, by Dale Carnegie. I believe this was written in the 20s, I want to say. And it can fall, again, in several different categories, if you will. It could fall under business. It could fall under self-improvement, but it's just a super great book to understand maybe a little bit more about yourself and about how you interact with other people, and maybe if you're looking for some help in that sense, like how can I be a better people person, how can I do better at my job, because almost all jobs deal with people, right? Even if you're working remote, you still have to connect or communicate with people on some level. And so if you want to improve on that stuff at all, this book is super great. So that's my stack for now. I don't know, I might have to do another stack later, but if you have any comments or questions, leave them below. Hit the buttons, share with a friend, and I hope you found some of this a little bit helpful today.